If you're a regular viewer, you'll know that each week in Revisited, we go back to an event that hit the headlines a few years or even decades ago. Well, this week, the event gives us a certain perspective of one of today's burning issues, the war in Gaza. We're going to follow some of the Palestinians who also faced conflict over 75 years ago and their descendants. That is, back in 1948, at the creation of the State of Israel, what the Palestinians call the Nakba, the Great Catastrophe. Over 80% of the Palestinian population forced into exile in neighbouring countries, Lebanon, Egypt, Syria and Jordan. At the time, Jordan welcomed around 100,000 Palestinian refugees, and several thousand of them settled right next to the Jordanian capital Amman in Zarqa, at the time still a desert. In the very first refugee camps, well, factions soon took root. The aim to hit back at Israel. In 1970, Fedayeen fighters even forced 3 airliners full of passengers to land at the Zarqa airbase. And in front of the world's cameras, they blew up the, by then, empty planes before freeing their hostages. At that, King Hussein of Jordan could no longer turn a blind eye. He launched the Black September crackdown. Thousands killed in clashes between the Jordanian army and the Fedayeen. In the end, Palestinian fighters fled to Lebanon, civilians allowed to stay on condition they did not take up arms. Well, since then, Zarqa has become Jordan's second largest city. It still has a strong Palestinian identity. The report you're about to see was filmed in part before the Hamas attack on Israel in October 2023 and the subsequent war in Gaza. Well, Sophie Guignon and Chloé Domas revisit Zarqa for France 24.
Zarqa was a desert. There wasn't a single house. Zarqa was empty. We fled our country in 1948. When the Palestinian people were dispersed, some went to Egypt, others to Lebanon. We came to Jordan. This place has become a refugee camp called the Return Camp. My name is Nasser. I live here. People living in the camp are descendants of the first refugees. At the beginning, there were only tents. Now, 75 years later, we have built houses with 1, 2, or 3 levels. There is a floor for each generation. We pass them down from generation to generation, from father to son, grandson, great-grandson. This was the first place for Palestinian refugees to gather in Jordan.
3 generations have grown up in the camp. Today, 21,000 people are crammed into less than 1 square kilometer. With urban growth, the camp is now part of the city of Zarqa, but the living conditions remain precarious. What was supposed to be a temporary solution has become permanent, even for the dead.
We started burying people here in the 1950s when the camp was still being set up. I have a lot of relatives buried here, like my grandmother and my aunt. The graveyard is full. Tombs are really close to one another. It was not planned for the long term because nobody thought we would stay for so long.
A lack of space means residents now bury their loved ones outside the camp, in other parts of Zarqa. The Hashemite kingdom is home to 13 camps like this one, which all fall under the authority of the monarchy. Palestinian flags are technically prohibited, and the Jordanian police is in charge of security. But since October 7th, life in Jordan is tuned to the war between Hamas and Israel, and the population clearly supports Palestinians. Nasser lives a few steps away. His family are refugees who came from Jaffa in 1948. He inherited this house from his grandparents. Inside, he has created a small museum where he discreetly collects all sorts of objects that symbolize the Palestinian cause.
The most important item I have is soil from Palestine, from Ramallah, and sand from the beach of Jaffa, and a stone. This is all from Palestine. It's my land. My father took his first steps on this land. It has a taste and a smell that sadly I don't know. I only have these samples. These keys are a symbol of our return. We've always kept our keys because we will go back to our houses with the original key.
Descendants of Palestinian refugees like Nasser make up more than half of the kingdom's population. The vast majority now have Jordanian citizenship, a unique case in the Middle East where Palestinians remain stateless for the most part.
I'm of Palestinian origins and of Jordanian nationality. I can proudly say that I'm Jordanian. I can't say I'm fully Palestinian nor just Jordanian. I'm attached to my origins.
Established in 1949, the UNRWA, the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, provides health and education services in the camps. But this vital support could cease as the agency's biggest donors threatened to cut funding following Israeli allegations that some of its Gaza employees took part in the October 7th attacks. Without UNRWA, 23-year-old Mahmoud, who is originally from Gaza, could not have studied. He now sells second-hand clothes in the market. For him, the war in Gaza is a living nightmare.
The pain I feel is impossible to describe. Like fire burning inside of me. It's like I'm going to explode.
Like Mahmoud, 160,000 descendants of Gazan refugees who arrived in Jordan after the Six-Day War in 1967 are still stateless.
I live here, but I don't have Jordanian nationality. Because we arrived later, in 1967, we were never given it. And it is causing us some trouble.
Gazans are considered foreigners and are not allowed to work in the public sector, buy property, or apply for medical insurance.
Children's clothes, women's clothes, babies, 4 for 1 dinar. This all comes from abroad, from the United States, France, Spain. We import and sell again. I started working here during the holidays, and when I finished school, I just stayed.
It is almost impossible for young Gazans like Mahmoud to access higher education. To enroll in public universities, they are required to pay foreign student fees far beyond their means.
I stay in this job because I can't find another one. Being from Gaza, there are a lot of jobs I'm not allowed to do. They tell me, oh, you don't have Jordanian ID, you can't work. There is a lot of injustice. We are discriminated against everywhere.
Like most Palestinians from Gaza, Mahmoud knows his only future is the camp. At night, it's closing time. But since the start of the war in Gaza, business is slow.
Psychologically and financially, nobody feels like going shopping right now. People don't want to buy anything, so we have to try and get by.
Every day, Mahmoud goes home with his cousin Ahmad, who also sells clothes. Together, they leave Zarqa's markets to go to the neighbouring camp of Marka, where a lot of the Gazans live, about 15 kilometers away in the suburbs of Amman.
I was born in a camp 23 years ago, and every day I leave one camp to go and work in another one. That's it.
A routine without much prospect. Tonight is a rare moment of escape. For dinner, there is makloube. But while they enjoy the Palestinian national dish, they can't take their eyes off the TV, where Qatari channel Al Jazeera is broadcasting news about Gaza.
We watch the news every day since October the 7th.
We follow what's happening every minute.
We have relatives and neighbors there in Rafah. I speak to them. They tell me they don't have food, they don't have water, and the signal is really bad. Just imagine that you're seeing your brother getting massacred in front of you, but you're powerless. It's very painful. We all have the same life and the same future. Like all young people, I dream of making a living, enough to eat, drink, get married. That's all. My future is here. I can't leave. Where can I go? I'm a refugee. I don't feel that this is my country. My homeland is Palestine.
The right of return is an unattainable dream for 6 million Palestinians around the world. While it is guaranteed by international law since 1948, UN Resolution 194 has never been implemented by Israel. Over the past 75 years, Jordan has received several waves of hundreds of thousands of refugees. They first settled in the camps, but many of the most qualified refugees took advantage of their integration through citizenship to improve their living conditions by building modern neighborhoods in the desert. In Zarqa, a brand new town has emerged for the middle class. This is where Iman and her family live.
I was born with Jordanian nationality, but both my parents are from Palestine. Can you give me the bread, please? This is the traditional breakfast for all people living in Jordan and Palestine. There are fava beans, hummus, and let's not forget the most important part, olive oil. It travels with every Palestinian.
Iman and her family feel well integrated in Jordanian society and benefit from all civil rights, thanks to this precious card.
This is my ID card, with the national number and my birth date. This card gives me the right to vote. My generation hasn't suffered exile or displacement. I don't feel broken. I don't feel like I'm a refugee.
An hour from the capital Amman, the city is now home to half of the kingdom's industries. And thanks to massive investments from Palestinians, Zarqa is now the country's second biggest city.
Here in New Zarqa, life has changed. Buildings are more modern. There are shopping centres, restaurants and hotels. Jordanian nationality is an opportunity and a blessing for Palestinians. I have invested everything to open a business. It's a common project with my husband. We opened a medical lab.
سلامتهم ايش مالهم هم؟ صار بيرضعوا بيستفرغوا، لما اخذتهم على الدكتور حكى لي يمكن الحليب، ما اعرف ولا شيء. تقدري تطلعي انت اذا حابه، تطلعي بس خلص شروق. فك التورنيكيت. لا خلي ايدك خلي ايدك انت خلي ايدك. اعطيني اياه الي انا. لا يا ماما حبيبي.
حللنا على المسافة.
احس انه راسي بالعالي.
I feel that I can walk with my head held high. It was my dream and my husband's dream to invest in our own project.
إذا في مجال بترجعوا على فلسطين. شو بتعملي؟
الموضوع بصراحة مش سهل.
This question isn't easy. The answer's difficult. It stirs a lot of contradictory feelings, but I feel safe here.
مشاعر كتير.
Frankly, I don't think I would leave everything I have in Jordan behind to go back to Palestine.
We spoke to Iman before the war between Hamas and Israel broke out. While she is a perfect example of successful integration in Jordanian society, she also tries to give back to her community by participating in a health day organized by the authorities to take care of Zarqa's poorest.
This is the ophthalmology clinic.
Some of the most vulnerable patients are newcomers, Syrian refugees. Over 1 million have settled in Jordan since the start of the war in 2011. Iman wants to show solidarity.
When my parents left Palestine for Jordan, they suffered a lot and needed help. Today I want to give that same help to people who are going through the same pain my family has been through. It's my way of giving back to my community.
This day is also a way for Iman to remember her own story. In Zarqa's camp, Nasser, the keeper of memories, clings to the right of return as his only hope of ever going back to Jaffa. And so no one forgets, he created a social media page for the first refugees.
I've created these sort of ID cards with the picture of the deceased person, his country of origin, and his name. For those of us who were born in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, or the 2000s in Jordan, who's going to make sure we have the right to return? Archives are very important for me because they guarantee our right to return. I will do this work until my last breath.
For Nasser, staying in the camp is a way of keeping the memory of the Nakba alive. He hopes it won't fade away, even if his daughters, 20-year-old Zahar and 22-year-old Nawar, already dream of elsewhere.
Jordan is our second home, not our homeland. In the future, I hope to have a life outside the camp. I would like to improve my life in Jordan and have a good future.
While a fourth generation of Palestinians grows up in exile, chances of a peaceful solution between Israelis and Palestinians get slimmer and slimmer. Despite longing to return to their homeland, Jordan could become a permanent home for millions of refugees.
Sophie Guignon and Chloe Domin revisiting Zarqa for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. Don't forget, of course, you can catch it once again on our website at france24.com. More news coming up very shortly for you. Thanks for watching.